Hello again, friends, and you are my friends, and welcome to a Wednesday's Talking Town, your match preview from, you guessed it, still a half-built room, but it's my half-built room, and I love it dearly. I know I said I'd probably be more further advanced the next time you saw me. That was on Sunday, obviously. I'm no further advanced, but I'm probably further back. I've probably gone backwards, if truth be told, but hey, we're here. Thanks for joining us, whether live or on catch up. If you're live, get active in our live comments. We want thoughts, opinions, predictions. We've got some transfer rumours. When haven't we got transfer rumours? It's that type of season, or certainly silly season is upon us. Get your thoughts in on those. And if you're watching on catch up, FTA, comment for that algorithm. You know the business by now. You know what to do. And come along and join our Discord 24/7 365 ITFC chat. If you're a YouTube member, you can cancel that at any point, $4.99. But it does get pretty busy. And obviously with the championship playoffs, which we'll talk about a little bit in a moment, but with that going on, there's an awful lot of chat. And with transfers coming up, there'll be even more chat. Right. So let's get cracking. I know we're late. Apologies. Well, when aren't we late? And why am I saying sorry? I mean, I'm sorry we're late, but by now you expect it from me. So it's, a mute point. But joining me, last week we had Ben, who hadn't been on the channel for a little while. Well, we've gone back to the cupboard and we've got this man here. We've missed him so much. It is, of course, Mr. Mark Tuxford. Mark, welcome in. How you doing?
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right. Halfway through that sentence, I was just remembering what we were talking about before we went live, and about podcasting and people asking you how you start a podcast. And as I was talking and waffling, I just thought, yeah, it literally is just chatting bollocks, basically. And that's what I was doing about a minute or so ago. So cheers for that pre-live chat. It obviously went well for me. But how are things? I know it's been a while since we've had you on the show. Too long. My fault. That will not happen again. But how are you? How is the Tuxford sphere?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, can't complain. I think the last time I come on was months ago now. I feel like I've only probably been on once since the turn of the year. So yeah, so sort of a long time coming to come back on, really. But yeah, I think when I last was here, same old, really, wasn't it? I mean, it kind of looked like it was going down anyway. So yeah,
same old. It's the same old story, isn't it, mate? Let's be honest. Nothing much has changed. So we're in silly season, as I said at the top of the show. The latest one is obviously Delap. We all know he's going to be leaving. Where to, we don't know. But obviously, recent reports suggesting Manchester United are in the driving seat. They are the driving force. That will perhaps be the destination that Liam Delap finds himself in next year. What are your thoughts on that as a destination? If we take it at face value that they are in the driving seat and perhaps they are the club that is going to end up signing him, is that the right place for Liam Delap, do you feel? Is it a good move? Where are you on
that? I think realistically he could really go to any Premier League side at this point, especially with his release clause.
Yeah.
So I think if I was advising someone like Delap, then I think it would probably be a case of that I would probably be advising him that, you want to go to a club that you're likely to get played, because your next sort of stepping stone is to be in the England side, because he wants caps. Obviously, he was training with Tuchel's side earlier in the season, wasn't in the first team squad, but was still training with them. So from that point of view, he's got a taste of it. So he isn't going to want to sit on the bench, at a City, for example. He's going to want to play football again and score goals like he has done this year. But I think if I was to really sort of pick a club out of thin air that I think would suit him and suit his development further, because you've got to remember this is a young striker still. So for me, I'd be looking probably more at like a Forest, where he's that kind of adequate replacement for someone like Chris Wood. He's not getting any younger. I know he's been obviously very good this year, having a bit of a purple patch. But generally, I think Delap is, could be a good sort of Forest player. But I think ultimately, yes, he will go to United. But like I say, he could go anywhere. Yeah. And I think the thing with United at the moment is that they probably will want to sign younger players, bed them in, play the Amorim way. But like I say, literally go anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. Could literally go anywhere, and we've said as much in recent weeks. Is Manchester United the right club for him? There's always a lot of noise surrounding them. Perhaps rightly so, because they are the world's biggest football team. And is he going to fit in there? Is he going to improve as a player? It's a lot of variable factors for Manchester United, isn't there? That as opposed to a more settled, traditional current.
You go to someone like United. I know they haven't been great for the last couple of years, but as soon as you pull that United shirt on, that's a different type of pressure.
Absolutely,
so, yeah. For someone of his age, he's really got to hit the ground running. And I think really, I personally don't think Manchester United is the right club currently for him. As I say, I think he should probably be aiming more for no disrespect to Forest, but a mid-table type side that have ambition. Someone like a Brentford or someone like that. But you look across the Premier League sides at the moment, or certainly the ones that are staying up. You've got the likes of West Ham, Tottenham. A lot of those clubs are crying out for a striker, and have been for absolutely years. I know that Spurs have got Solanke, but I don't think he's the answer for them. But they've missed a striker since Harry Kane left, and you think the perfect person to go and replace a Harry Kane is probably someone like a Delap, who has that strength, has that power, is getting better at holding the ball up, is quick. I think for me, the only thing I say about him at the moment is that his finishing isn't always there. I think he's scored some great goals this year, and he's shown his finishing ability. But you think about how many chances he's missed this year. I mean, he should be on 20 plus goals a season this season, personally, for me. But he's missed a lot of chances.
Yeah. He has a few chances where perhaps he could have converted them, but he scored double-digit goals in a team that has really struggled, and that's an outlink. Obviously, a player that is ours and coming back. I know he's out of contract, but I think I believe there's an extension to the contract. It's obviously Marcus Harness, who has sort of bid his farewells to Derby. What are your thoughts on Marcus Harness? Is there a future for him at the football club? Did the club trigger the extension? If they do, it could just be to protect value and sell on. But would you be looking at him and thinking he's a player we can bring back into the squad and he can really contribute? Just to give you an idea, Tux, this year, 26 starts out of 41 appearances for Derby, 4 goals, 3 assists are the main stats to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think at best for me, he's a championship squad player. He'd probably obviously get in some of the bottom end championship sides, but ultimately for us, he's a squad player. Would you want to re-sign a squad player? Who knows? But I think it kind of goes in 2 areas for me. I think one is that, does McKenna want to bring back some of the old guard and boost that morale a bit more for the new season, or does he want to go more in a completely new direction where it's probably time for maybe someone like a Harness to go? But I can sort of see some of these certainly the players that built our team, like the Harnesses of this world, probably maybe even Al Hamady coming back into the frame a little bit, because they know what it takes. I suppose they know what the morale's like in the camp. So you just come off the back of a really tough Premier League season, and I think you probably want sort of familiar faces around the club potentially. I know you shouldn't just get re-signed for that reason, but what Harness does bring is work ethic. He tracks back. That's what I like about him the most. I think is that someone like Davis, who does like to maraud forward, he will try and help out defensively, which I think maybe has been Davis's downfall a little bit this year, where he hasn't really had anyone to sort of track back. So I wouldn't be disappointed. I think if you'd asked me this 2 years ago, I probably would have said that Harness is one of our worst players, along with Caden Jackson. I think I would have been saying both of them, get rid of them. But Harness has proved me wrong in certain games. He's popped up with important goals and all that sort of stuff. But I think ultimately you've got to look at what he wants from his career. I don't think he wants to sit on the bench anymore. I think he really wants to go out and play. And I think at his age, it's a time to really go and make yourself your own in a way and go get a club to play football.
Yeah. Personally, I mean, obviously, as you say, he's popped up for crucial goals at different moments in time, and he's a really nice guy, and he's a decent player. I just think we should be aiming for a little bit better. Coming down from the Premier League, parachute money, and all things even. the squad, if in the sense of all things even, if the squad doesn't change at all, now we all know it will, but if it doesn't change at all, you've got Clark on Broadhead left wing, you've got Ogbeni and Burns right wing, you've got Schmodix and Chaplin as your 10. I just don't see a place for a Marcus Harness because I know he can play left wing, but you've already got 2 good options there. I know you can play central, but you've already got 2 good options there. It feels like if we trigger the extension, it will probably be simply to keep that value and try and sell on.
Well, I think it would be
or Portsmouth, etc.
Yeah, I think it would be one of them that if he does stay, it will probably be a customary sort of years extension. And I also think maybe it sort of depends on what Burns and Ogbeni's situation is like when they come back after pre-season. Are they going to be fit? Are they still sort of carrying something? Because I know it's not his preferred position, but Harness could play there, and for a temporary situation, that's what McKenna might be thinking of, rather than going out and buying another right winger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. And obviously, I mentioned the squad there, and it probably is going to change. We're going to go through that in more detail in the summer, of which we hope to have you on with us, and you can tell us what you think in more detail. But have you got 1 or 2 players that you feel will be moving on that aren't called the lap, or do you feel it'll be a very settled summer? Early predictions for you, settled summer, or have you got 1 or 2 that you can already see probably will make the exit?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a summer of change, if I'm honest, Gov. I think you've got the likes of Delap, Hutchinson, that for me are probably obvious to go. But I can only really think of sort of 5 or 6 players maybe that are probably a definite or a certainty to sort of be with us next season, really. And
okay.
The rest of them have got a sort of a question mark over their head. And I don't mean them going to the Premier League. I mean, some of them could make sidestep moves and go to a fellow Championship side or something like that. The likes of Luongo's obviously going to go, and he's going to go abroad and retire there and stuff like that. But the likes of Broadhead, for example, I'm not sure if he wants to stay because of the way I think he's sort of been a bit mismanaged this year. And I feel like certainly players like Broadhead, and you sort of forgive him for this in a way, if he wants to move on, he's done everything he can possibly do at Ipswich. Great player for us, right?
Yeah.
But then if he stays, he might think that we might not go up next year if he gets a better offer and all that sort of stuff. So there's players like that, excuse me, for me, that would make sidestep moves. And as I say, I can only really think of sort of 5 or 6 players off the top of my head that I think would be probably sort of certainties to stay. Whereas the rest, I think, do have question mark. Players like Leif Davis, he could potentially go to a Premier League side. I know his sort of stock has sort of fallen slightly, but he could be. I wouldn't be surprised if he went to West Ham, for example. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got, other players who can I think of at the moment? Broadhead, Jack Clark. For me, Jack Clark, I was saying before we came on the show that I'd have very mixed feelings as Jack Clark at the moment if I was looking at my future at Ipswich Town, because he's been a massive scapegoat for when we've shot ourselves in the foot, when we've got players sent off. I can think of Villa, Arsenal, certainly games where he started and had to get brought off. Same with Newcastle as well. Started the game, got brought off because we got a man sent off. And if I was him, I'd be like, why is it always me?
Yeah. I agree. And I said the same thing, I think, post Newcastle. Yeah. I would be, asking the why always me question. Particularly Newcastle sticks out to my mind because Enciso wasn't having the greatest game that day.
No.
And it wasn't like, Enciso was on fire or he'd scored the goal. Like if it's Everton and he just scored the goal, then you go a man down, then you can say, well, he's just scored the goal, maybe he's coming alive, you want to keep him on the field, etc., etc. But Newcastle, if memory serves me correctly, Tux, he wasn't really.
No, he wasn't. I mean, I thought we started off well, and obviously the Johnson getting sent off, just completely obliterated the game. But
it did.
I wouldn't say he was having his best game. I thought we were okay as a unit. But yeah,
you're right. The why always me line, I think is fair to, to say here, and it's interesting obviously because if Sunderland go back up, there'll be links forever between Sunderland and Jack Clark, whether
possibly.
they're true
I think,
or not.
You've also got the Leeds United in there as well. He used to play for Leeds. He's from Leeds, and this is a player that somebody like a Premier League side like a Leeds might see. Well, actually, he was sort of not unfairly treated, but not managed in the correct way. He could do a job for us in the Premier League. And then you've got players like George Hurst, where he's been linked with Leeds and Burnley and teams like that. So I think there's going to be a little bit of change. And,
Okay.
I honestly think this is McKenna's probably toughest season.
Oh,
And the reason why I say that is because since he's come in, it's been momentum building all of the time, sort of relative success all of the time, right?
Mm.
I know he's had dips in form and stuff like that, but ultimately over
Yeah.
the course of the season, when he first came in, right through to where he is now, the Premier League was a free hit. If you speak to any Ipswich fan that's got a bit of sense, it was a free hit, right? But he's coming back into the Championship. We're expected to do something next year. This is not little Ipswich Town anymore. This is former Premier League Ipswich Town. So he's under pressure himself to get that team going again, because that's a hard thing. That is a hard thing. After a tough Premier League season, to get that team going again is a different level.
Yeah.
This, I think, will be his toughest season as an Ipswich Town boss.
And you've also got to manage the expectation, because for the first time as manager of Ipswich Town Football Club, arguably the first time, but perhaps the second time if you want to include League One as well, that we are going to be a heavy favourite. We are going to be the fan, not just with the outside noise, not just with every single person's predictions of their league table or the bookies or the punditry, but more importantly, or just as important, the fans of this football club are going to be expectant. Some will say, "Don't be arrogant," or we're not going to necessarily go straight back up. But the vast majority, and I'm going to say it, rightfully so, will be expecting that they can do a Burnley, that they can do a Sheffield United potentially, should they win their playoff final, that they can do that. What a lot of clubs do when they get relegated is that sort of that bounce back straight away, or certainly have a really good season. So for the first time, or arguably the second time, it's going to be a real. It's you've got to hit the ground running, because that's why you. That's
if you have a slow start and you start losing games, like it's not just us, it's every club. Whether they've been relegated from the Premier League, just been promoted. If you have a slow start and say you don't win in the first sort of 5-6 games,
well, the boo birds will come out.
You've got a question mark over your head.
Yeah, and I think by that point the boo birds start to come out, not in great number, but a splutter.
Yeah,
a little bit of a splutter, because they expected it, and all that pressure of it building and then it not going to how you want. It just starts to sort of seep out. But it can do. But I don't think that's going to happen, because obviously I think McKenna is, well, he's got the Midas touch. He's the king of
Ipswich. Well, this is the thing. I think we've certainly got enough at this current state of play now. We've got enough to get out of that league next year.
Oh, right? More than enough as things stand right now. If no one left, more than enough. But it's going to be about the incomings as well as the outgoings, and we'll go through that through the summer. I'm really looking forward to getting your thoughts on it, because I think we're going to disagree on a couple of players, or just by what you've said there. So I'm looking forward to that. But we have got a game to preview of a Premier League campaign that's still up and running. That is a bonus, I guess. In the Premier League campaign still going. That's going to finish quite late. The Championship season finishes, starts, 8th of August. There's not a lot of time between football finishing and pre-season starting. Which again, as a fan, is quite good, but as a club, that means you've got to be on it in the market, because you don't want to be starting the season betting players in, still needing players, all this different stuff. You want to be hitting that ground running, as we said. But Leicester, it could be a big game. It's not like an FA Cup final or a playoff final, but there is money involved. There is a monetary value perhaps involved, because if you do finish at third from bottom, you do get a little bit more money than you would do if you finish second from bottom. And to quote a famous supermarket, every little helps. And in case that's trademarked, I don't know who it come from. So what are you thinking, Tux? Are you looking forward to this game?
I think the term "looking forward" is probably a stretch.
But all right, are you gritting your teeth and watching it because you love a club involved with it? Is that a better sentence?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I love watching Ipswich Town, whatever league we're in, wherever we are in that league and all that sort of stuff, right?
I agree. I agree.
Probably since Christmas, I wouldn't say that I've enjoyed it as such, but this is what football fans are all about. You still go to support your club, right? And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm still going because I want to support the club. I'm not going to get a medal for it. I'm not a better fan than anyone else for doing it. I'm just saying that from that point of view, that's what I'm about. You know, I
Yeah.
want to support my club in any way I can. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how we finish the season. I know there's only 2 games left, but it'll be interesting to see how we sort of finish that. And obviously, you know, last home game of the season coming up as well. So, you know, I think it's going to be an interesting game because you've got someone like Jamie Vardy who, you know, wants to, you know, get his goal scoring record and obviously leave in and all that sort of stuff. So,
Last
you know,
home game for him, is it? Is it their last?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
So
So,
I'll just double check that. But that'll be obviously a big thing for him to get that sign
yeah,
to sign off with a goal, to also get the crowd going, because
yeah.
we actually likes that, don't we? But yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I've forgotten that.
Yeah, so I think from that point of view, it will be a bit of an interesting affair, I suppose. Obviously, we're playing them again next year, so you know, in the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. But from a I suppose a monetary value point of view, and then finishing in the league, then yeah, I suppose you want to finish above the bottom 2, don't you? So yeah,
You do. My computer's just frozen, so hopefully you can still see and hear me.
yeah.
I'll keep talking as if you can. But you talk about Leicester, playing them again next year. Obviously, you kind of want to do what they did the year they went up with us, which is come back down from the Premier League, keep them, some players, add to the squad, because that back, I think I'm right in saying most of the back four they came down with stayed, and it was a formidable back four and gave them that real foundation to go forward. And obviously, they added some big money signings, didn't they? And things like that. But that's what we've got to try and replicate to come back again. But I'm looking forward to every Town game because it's football, and while it's a shorter summer, Tux, that's life without football is a bit duller. Let's be honest. Yeah. Colin says Kieran McKenna we love this time next season. Portsmouth at least no VAR next year. Colin says sold out away end. That is true. Trevor says if someone did go up, would they be interested in Jack Clark? I think there'd be links there, whether it's really interest or not. Only the player, agent, and club know, but there'll be links forever because it's an easy player to link, particularly if they've just been promoted and got all that riches that we were receiving this time last year. Before we go do our 1 to 11, don't forget we are partnered with Stowmarket Osteopaths. Don't live life in pain. Give Freddie a call 0144 961 3633. That's Freddie at Stowmarket Osteopaths for osteopath and physiotherapy services. Don't live life in pain. Tell him the Gov at Talking Town has sent you. That's 0144 961 3633. Right, 1 to 11. Alex Palmer in goal. Nice and easy. Back four. What is your back four going to be this week, Tux?
I think I would probably go with, certainly the same that we've fielded for the last couple of games, really. So yeah, Tuanzebe, O'Shea, Burgess, Greaves.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't disagree with that necessarily. Yeah, okay, I'll take that. Midfield 2. This is the interesting one. Obviously, Kayus on the bench Saturday came on. Taylor started alongside Morsey. I think Taylor started the last 2 now alongside Morsey. Are you persisting with Taylor next to Morsey? Are you bringing somebody else in instead of Morsey? What's your midfield 2?
I would probably just go with Taylor because I think, it's quite obvious now that, well, I don't know why we're playing loan players now when there's nothing to play for as such, and they're not going to be here next year anyway. So why are we developing other people's players?
Do you extend that to all the loan players, so not just Kayus, but also in CISO, for example?
Yeah, yes, to a certain degree. Yeah, I think, I suppose you could even argue that players like Tuanzebe and Burgess still haven't agreed their deals and stuff like that. So will they be here next year? Probably not. But ultimately, they are our players. So I suppose for the midfield 2, I don't think it ultimately works, but I'd just give them game time. Morsey and Taylor, and just go with it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. I want to see Kayus because I like watching Kayus play, but I do also see your point of view about loan players that aren't going to be here next year. It's kind of a
don't get me wrong. I love Kayus. I think he's
pointless,
a quality
really.
player, and in some sort of weird universe, I'd love us to sign him, but that's not going to happen. So I think ultimately you've just got to think about the players that are going to be here or want to be here next year, and just give them the platform, give them the chance to play Premier League football.
So so I can see your point, and I think it is a bit pointless playing loan players that aren't going to be here next year in games that don't ultimately matter. I know Trevor's saying they're playing for £2 million. I think that's the difference between finishing third from bottom, second from bottom, 2 million quid, 3 million quid, 5 million quid, whatever it is, around that ballpark figure. Yeah, okay, that shouldn't be sniffed at. But I'll counteract the pointless comment I made there a second ago, Tux, by saying while Jack Taylor may well be here next year, do you already know that he's not the answer? So is it almost, okay, we can play Jack Taylor because he's going to be here, but he isn't going to be here in the sense of he is the answer, he is the future in that position, because I've not seen enough of him to say next season that's who I want as my number one central midfield plan next to either Morsey or whoever.
Yeah,
I would want someone better. So in that case, I might as well play Cayuse and give him a sign off.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I can't disagree with that, because I also think that Taylor isn't one of my 5 or 6 players that doesn't have a question mark over his head, because I think ultimately he could make a sidestep move and go to a Bristol City, for example, and go and sign for them. So while it might not be a Premier League move, he might make a Championship move. So, but I think given what we've got, and I suppose trying to look at players that we can really motivate for next year, I guess, then I think Taylor's got to be playing, I suppose. But I do get the point about 2 million, and you want to put your best side out, I suppose, to try and get that. But maybe that's what they're thinking. That's why they're playing Zito and all those players.
Okay, so you're going to go Morsey and Taylor. What's your 3 behind the striker? I won't ask you the strikers just yet, but what's your 3 behind the striker going to be?
I think Chaplin in the 10.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm really torn about sort of the wide players, because again, like Hutchinson could sort of fit into that mould of he's not going to be here next year, so why are we bothering with him? But I suppose ultimately he's our player, so yeah, you'd go with Hutchinson, Chaplin, and I would go for Jack Clark.
That would be my 3 as well. Hutchinson on the right, Chaplin in the middle, Jack Clark on the left. We were saying before we went live about Jack Clark, and I told you, I'll say it here, I think he's getting better every time we see him in a Town shirt. And had Town survived this season, you could have seen a player that could really, really contribute next year in the Premier League. I think he's growing into it as the season goes on. And sadly, the games are going to finish before he's really grown into it. But he's also quietly put together a fairly, I wouldn't say decent, but certainly not a bad first year, in the sense of he's, obviously been in and out of the side. He's been off, started games, but then been taken off because of red cards. But he's still got 4 assists in a team that doesn't have many players that have got that many assists. So, he's still up there in terms of the assist charts. I like Jack Clark, and I hope it's another reason why I hope Sunderland don't go up. The other reason, obviously, is Sheffield United had the parachute money. Them leaving the division would be helpful. And also them going up, for me, makes it difficult for Jack Clark to head back to Sunderland if they're in our division. I don't think they've got the buying power for that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I do agree on all of those points. I think I feel sorry for Jack Clark slightly, just obviously from what I was saying earlier about that he's a scapegoat when we've had a man sent off. It always feels like he's the one who has to make way. So I think I'd have a lot of mixed emotions if I was Jack Clark looking at my Ipswich career this season. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is considering a move. But I'd start him against Leicester. I think the only thing I can really say for him at the moment is that is against him is he's far too weak. It's so frustrating to watch him sometimes, because he's got all of the ability in the world and he could be a very, very good player. And I've seen that, watching Sunderland and when he played for them, but he's just so weak. I just can't get over it how weak he is. And I know he's a winger, so but yeah, it does frustrate me.
The legend is Carl Brooks. Carl, we've not seen you in a while. Welcome back. It's good to see the name. Thing with Jack Clark that goes criminally underrated is his ball carrying. We'll see more of it next season, in brackets, if he stays. In Carl's opinion, he is one we should build around, says Carl. Appreciate the comment, Carl. Nice to see you. All right, striker, Delap or Hurst? Hurst or Delap? Hurst. Who are you going for? Hurst. What, for the same reasons you said before about players that are going to be here necessarily?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I think I think I'm not even. I hadn't really considered the 2 million thing, if I'm honest with you. So I think if I'm just picking the team based on, what we're going to be about or hopefully be about next season, then I think it'd be George Hurst personally. But yeah, I suppose the other thing is though, like when you play Liam Delap, you're sort of risking an injury there, and I don't know how that would affect it if then what his move's going to be like moving forward to a club. If he's
Would
injured, is he still going to move?
Well, would it? I think it. I might be wrong. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an agent, player, or football club, but would it be dependent on severity of the injury? So obviously,
yeah, true.
If they can get the medical done or get the most of the medical done before the window shuts, it goes through. He may well still be carrying that injury for a couple of weeks, maybe a month afterwards. But if they can get most of the medical done and obviously be aware of what the situation with that injury is, that'd be fine. But if it's an injury that goes well past, but I don't know, in all honesty, because football clubs, I mean, medical's a medical, right? We've seen clubs take a risk on a player. Medical might say something and they still say, what we've seen players like Ruud van Nistelrooy, but the famous one, obviously, Man United, they were all set, and then the medical showed something, despite him playing on what they said was an injury, and they pulled out the first time, or the deal didn't go through the first time, and we've seen it so many different times. So medicals are still, I think, one of those things are shrouded in a little bit of mystery, in the sense of you're not really sure what clubs are looking for, what's a red flag to some clubs, what turns some clubs off completely, what's we'll just negotiate the deal down by £5 million. You just don't know. But you're right. It is, every time you do play him, it is a risk that he walks on and heaven forbid gets himself an injury. But yeah, it's an interesting one. That I'd love if anybody knows. Anybody knows? Do get in touch with us. Do let us know.
I suppose it does depend on the severity of the actual injury itself, but you can get some real horrible injury. Like look at Wes Burns.
Yeah,
you can get some real horrible injuries, and if that was, obviously I don't want it to happen, but if that was Liam Delap, then what does that mean for him? What does that mean for the club? All that sort of stuff. And I think ultimately we're all expecting him to go for quite a piss poor release clause, but ultimately, that's his future, isn't it?
Well, just before we go on to the score prediction, I think to answer that question, what would it mean? It would mean he's a Town player next season, or certainly a Town player until January. And obviously, we all know how. And then it come January, yeah. So he'd be a Town player until the January, and January is a very notoriously hard window. Would he then be fit to move in the sense of match fit? Would a club want to take a risk on 30 odd million, whatever it would be at that point in time, with a player that is only going to come in for a couple of months and play a handful of games because he's not been fit? Would the player want to stay until the summer? If the club then got promoted, would he then stay with the football club because they're back to the Premier League? It opens up a whole avenue of different parallel worlds, basically, of what ifs and scenarios. Some good, some not so good. But you just hope he doesn't get injured. You never want to see any player get injured, even players that you're not fond of. You never want to see anybody get injured. So hopefully he doesn't. But I'd start him. I would start him. He'd be my centre forward for sure. Kirk Lewis, welcome in. Kirk says 200 goals if Vardy scores. David says Delap for me finishing below Leicester this season could cost the club $1 million or more, which it is. You're not going to sniff at it, Tux. This million, 2 million, 3 million, whatever it is. But equally, in the grand scheme of having just received 150 odd million for being in the Premier League or whatever it is these days, it is a bit like finding 50p down the back of the sofa.
Yeah, it is. But from a business point of view, Ashton's going to be looking at that, isn't he? He's going to be saying, we need to finish as high as possible, not only just for that, but also a bit of pride, a bit of self-pride. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's kind of what they're thinking now.
Yeah, I think results are important. That's the big, that's the big thing.
And I think the other thing is as well, maybe some of this is actually that the likes of Enciso, is he playing because he has to play because he's under some sort of agreement that he has to
we don't know.
Make certain amount of appearances and all that sort of stuff, because that sort of stuff is in loan deals these days. So, I wouldn't be too surprised about that. But yeah, to be honest with you, I hadn't considered it. So whoever's saying it is right.
Yeah, Trevor says, look what happened with Broyo at Everton. Everton still signed him. Of course, we were. I think that was a big, medical drama, we believe, wasn't it? Or was certainly being reported at the time with Town. Obviously not getting the player in the end and going to Everton. We don't know how close it was. because we never know anything. But before we go to a score prediction, don't forget we are part with these Anglian Air Ambulance. If you want to help save lives and have the chance to win £1,000 every week, of course you do. Play these Anglian Air Ambulance Lottery. We're playing just £1 each week. You are helping to keep their yellow helicopters flying, which obviously is a life-saving vital service. The Anglian Air Ambulance Lottery creates 18 winners every week with prizes ranging from £50 to £1,000. So over 18s only. T&Cs apply. But please, whatever you do, gamble responsibly. Links in our description. So, Tux, even if Town don't win this weekend, if you played the East Anglian Air Ambulance Lottery, you could still be a winner. You could still be smiling. You could still be doing somersaults through the living room.
It's very true.
Just put, it could be. It could be true. It could be you. As another lottery says, it could be you.
It could be you.
It could be. Well, it won't be if you're not playing. So make sure you play. Anyway, gamble responsibly if you do. Score prediction, please, then, Mr. Tuxford.
Score draw, Gov.
Oh, a 1-1.
Yeah.
Oh, you normally go for a 2-2.
I do go for Desmond, yeah, but I'm going to go for a 1-0.
1-0. You're not alone. Trevor says 1-1. Colin says 2-1 to Town, but then when doesn't Colin bet against his side? Let me know your score predictions in our live chat, or if you're watching on catch up, put it in the comments and I'll reply. Hit the like. We've just sent the prize off to our Survivor League winner, which we'll announce in due course. Well, we announced who won back in January, but I'll hopefully get some pictures or something. I don't know. We get something just to say, look, someone got their prize. Just to prove we get the prize from. Paul says Town 2-1. Bit of positivity coming through. We love to see it, but we're done for the day. Day, evening, whenever Tux, we're done. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for being with me. It's great to have you back. Hopefully, as I say, we'll get you on through the summer to discuss the ins and the outs because there's a lot to discuss, and I think you've got a lot to say about it. And I've got a lot that sort of pushes back against it, so I think it makes some good conversation. But thanks for joining me. This man here's the peaky one, Mark Tuxford. I've been your host. Like and subscribe, and catch us Sunday after Leicester, where we could put one hand on £2 million. Of course, it's like the £1 million drop, isn't it?
It's big, yeah.
Excellent. Right. See you then. Take care. God bless. Bye.